Our borrower that's paid a salary every 2 weeks is going to be very similar. So let's say we have a borrower that makes $3,000 every other week. They're going to receive 26 paychecks in a year, because if you just divide 52 weeks out of the year, divided by 2, if they get paid every other week, that gives you 26 pay periods for that borrower per year. So to figure out their annual income, you take the $3,000, multiply that by 78,000, or by 26, which gives you $78,000. Then to get their monthly, you're just going to simply divide that by 12, which gives you $6,500 a month. Now you'll notice if we'd just taken the $3,000 that the borrower made and multiplied that by 2 because they get paid every other week, that would have only given them $6,000. The way we did it, by multiplying it by 26 and then dividing by 12, gives us $6,500 a month that we can use to qualify that borrower. The last method of payment we're going to discuss is hourly. Now this does not involve complicated math, it just involves multiple steps. So let's talk about hourly. Let's assume our borrower makes $15 an hour. In order to calculate monthly income for a borrower who is paid hourly, we need to know how many hours a week they work. If they work full-time, underwriting guidelines say you can just use 40 hours a week, unless you know something different. So $15 an hour multiplied by 40 hours a week gives you $600 a week. And that just starts us where we were before. When we had a weekly income before, we multiplied that by 52. And if you multiply 600 by 52 on your calculator, that's going to give you $31,200 a year. And then to get our monthly amount, we're just going to divide that by 12. So when you divide that by 12, that gives you a monthly income amount of $2,600. Now, what if your borrower doesn't work full-time? Let's say you have a borrower who only works 30 hours a week. Same thing applies. You just need to, let's say, make $20 an hour, and they work 30 hours a week. So you take the $20 hourly rate, multiplied by 30, that's going to give them $600 a month in income, which that gives us the same number as we had over here. So it's going to end up with the same monthly income. But if you know that the borrower does not work 40 hours a week, you use the number of hours they actually work. Now, if the borrower makes more than 40 hours a week, you cannot just simply multiply their hourly rate by, for example, 45 hours. Those extra hours in excess of 40 hours are considered overtime. And most lending requirements require that you have at least 12 months, sometimes 2 years, of history in order to use the overtime. So typically, for a standard borrower, you're going to use 40 hours a week, and then if you can use overtime, you add that on top of that. Now let's review just a few examples of how you could use debt-to-income ratios in discussing with the borrower the loan amount for which they could qualify. Let's say a borrower comes to you and says they make $10,000 a month, and they want to know the payment for which they can qualify. Now you know that you're going to get them approved with a loan program that has a back-end debt ratio requirement only. And so that program says that the back-end debt ratio has to be equal to or less than 40%. And the program doesn't really worry about the front-end debt ratio. It only worries about the back-end. So your next question to the borrower then is regarding their month. So when you do that math calculation, that gives you $3,350 when you subtract the $650 away from the $4,000. That number right there, the $3,350, represents the maximum amount that the borrower can have in monthly housing obligation based on their income and their other credit or debt obligations. Now, to figure the actual loan amount, you need a financial calculator, and what you'd do is you'd stick that number in for your payment and then solve for your loan amount, and that would give you your maximum loan amount for the loan. Those calculations are beyond the scope of this course, but you do need to understand how to arrive at a maximum payment amount for a borrower based on the debt-to-income ratio requirements of the certain program, as well as the borrower's other debt obligations.